सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। Welcome back to one more edition of the Bhagavad Gita course. Let me just sometimes you get delayed by a minute, and then that results in delay by 2 minutes in the final round. In any case, some little bug with my webcam. No problem. So we were at the third chapter yesterday, and we discussed one of the uh, tricky verses, which is the Tattvavittu Mahabaho Gunakarma Vibhagayoho Guna Guneshu Vartanta Iti Matvana Sajjate. So there are multiple ways of looking at this verse, but somehow from the available explanation, the one that D.V. Gundappa gives makes the most sense. Now, one of the challenges is that when we face these kind of verses, like I told you, probably in the whole of Gita, which is 700 shlokas, there may not be more than 20 verses which are unclear like this. Most of them are very clear. So, in case you find something challenging that's not clear from the direct meaning and the explanation is not very convincing to you, it is very safe to keep that aside and look at the other verses, because the way in which the Gita is structured, there are so many verses that give a lot of practical guide to us. And even before we bring one of the things into implementation in our life, we are trying to chase behind the meaning of the others. So if you say, oh, unless I understand all these 700 verses with the same level of clarity, I will not start implementing, then the loss is yours. So the moment you start understanding something, we try to bring a few precepts into our life, into practice, and then slowly, by our own experience and larger picture, we will get to understand some of the more complicated verses as well. So let me just share my screen. One second. So we were here. Let me share my screen. Can see this, I suppose. Just 1 second. So we were at 29. So we have seen that one should not disturb these fools of limited understanding, Krishna says. Okay. Yes. So you can see my screen again, right? Okay. So we should not disturb people of limited understanding. Excuse me. So the wise people should inspire the ignorant ones by constantly working in the right direction and giving them a good role model. And over a period of time, the ones who are working with attachment, they will see the wise people and realize that there is a better way of leading our life. When we see people around us who are always smiling, cheerful, then we wonder how come these people are so cheerful despite so many problems that they are facing. We try to find out from them, we try to ask them, what is the secret of your calmness? What is the secret of your efficiency? So, like that, when people are doing work in an efficient way, in a composed manner, leading a very, very high quality of life, high caliber of thinking, naturally other people who are little more perceptive will start asking them questions and trying to find out how to improve the quality of their life. Okay, so now we go to the next shloka. Mai sarvani karmani sanyasadhyatma chetasa Nirashir nirmamo bhutva yudhyasva vigata jwaraha. So Krishna says that dedicate all your actions to me, or dedicate all your actions to Supreme, because here me and Supreme are synonyms. He says, dedicate all your actions to the Supreme, focus your mind on the Supreme, and free yourself from all sorts of possessions and desires, and cast off your mental fever and engage in battle. अध्यात्म चेतसा सर्वाणि कर्माणि मयि सन्न्यस्य निराशीः निर्ममः विगतज्वरः भूत्वा युध्यस्व. So adhyatma chetasa, that means having a mind that is tuned to spirituality. You're focusing your mind on the Supreme Self. So you are focusing on the Atma. So adhyatma chetasa sarvani karmani mai sanyasya. So dedicate all your actions, sarvani karmani, all your actions to you. You give it to me, or you dedicate it to me, which means dedicated to the Supreme. Nirashihi, without any asha, without any desires, without any wantings, neither hoping for good things nor despairing that bad things will happen. So, no expectations. Nirmamaha, no sense of possession, no sense of me and mine and ownerships. Vigata jwaraha, one whose jwara, fever, is gone. Casting off the fever, bhutva, becoming one who has cast off his fever. Yudhyasva, engage in battle, go and fight. So, after all this thing, again, there is a recollection. We are not here for some great intellectual debate or some discussion. We are here to work, engage in battle. So, he brings back that entire discussion, contextualizing it, saying, hey, we are in the middle of a battlefield. We have to get back to work. So enough of the sermon. In a way, he's suggesting it. Mai sarvani karmani.
Mai sarvani karmani.
Samnyasyadhyatma chetasa.
Sanyasyadhyatma chetasa.
Nirashir nirmamo bhutva.
Nirashir nirmamo bhutva.
Yudhyasva vigata jwaraha.
Yudhyasva vigata jwaraha.
Thank you. Then he says, Ye me matamidam nityam anutishtanti manavaha shraddhavanton anasuyanto shraddhavan anto anasuyanto muchyante tepi karmavihi. So here he says, those who sincerely practice my teaching without finding fault are also released from actions. Ye manavaha, those people, may idam matam, this matam, this teaching, mata is opinion, literally, but here it means teaching or instruction. This idam matam of mine, nityam anutishtanti, every without a break, continuously, in a sustained manner, those who practice my teaching without finding fault. Anasuyantaha, anasuya literally means one without asuya, one without jealousy or envy, but here anasuyantaha probably refers to not finding fault, not poking holes in the theory, not seeing this with a very, very skeptical mind, uber critical approach, but shraddhavantaha, with shraddha. So I told you earlier itself, shraddha does not mean blind faith. It means a certain amount of faith in the system, in someone, until the point the person does not deliver. So like the child has faith in the mother, shraddha in the mother, but if the mother is constantly trying to harm the child, or the doctor is constantly trying to harm the patient, or even if the doctor's intention is not to harm the patient, but the medicines are not effective, after a few consultations, the patient goes to another doctor. But till that time you take a decision that this doctor is inefficient for me, there is a certain shraddha which is required, because we are not experts in what they are experts in, right? What they know. We are not experts in medical science. We go to a doctor. The first thought that comes to our mind should be, okay, let us take this person's words at face value and then go forward. So, like that, anasuyantah shraddhavantaha. One must have faith and one must not find fault. Te api karma bihi muchyante. And even they also get freed from the bondage of actions. They release from actions, which basically means that they are not attached to the possible outcomes of the action. We have seen this before. Excuse me. What is interesting in this verse is that Krishna uses the word matam, which means literally means opinion, and here it means, like I said, instruction. Now, Krishna is trying to collect the wisdom of the ages and give it to Arjuna. Krishna is a representative of that wisdom of the ages because he has learned so many things, he has great experience, he is a very wise person. So, all that knowledge, what he has learned, he is giving it to Arjuna. Now, some of the things are his own original insights. Many of the things are from the tradition. However, he's got the humility to present it as me matam. This is my opinion. This is my view. This is my teaching. So he is not imposing it on anyone. He's saying this is what it is. It is good. He's giving he is doing a value judgment. He's saying this is good, but it is, at the end of the day, this is what I feel. And this is you can see this throughout the Bhagavad Gita, right up at the end where he says, think about this deeply, reflect on these teachings, and then you do whatever you like, whatever makes sense to you. So the sense of, so he's telling this is very good, this is very important, this is valuable. At the same time, you take a call. So those who sincerely practice the teaching without finding fault, they are also released from the bondage of actions. Ye me matamidam nityam.
Ye me matamidam nityam.
Anutishtanti manavaha.
Anutishtanti manavaha.
Shraddhavanto nasuyanto.
Shraddhavanto nasuyanto.
Sorry, you're right. Shraddhavanto nasuyanto.
Shraddhavanto nasuyanto.
Muchyante tepi karmabihi.
Muchyante tepi karmabihi.
Then he goes on to say, ye tvedad abhyasuyanto nanu tishtanti me matam sarvajnana vimudham stan vidhi nashtan achetasaha. So he says, but those who condemn my teaching and don't follow it are utterly deluded, lost, and mindless. So, like I said in the previous verse, that he is saying, this is my opinion, you are free to do it. However, he is also qualifying it. So, it is not like if you want to do it, you do it. If you don't want to do it, you don't do it. It's not like a being aloof. He is giving the choice. At the same time, he is underlining the fact that this is very useful, this is really good, and it's something that will add a lot of value. Although there is no force of any kind, of course, the person is free to choose whatever they want, but this is a right path, this is a valuable teaching. So he says, ye tu abhyasuyantah me etat matam, ye tu abhyasuyantaha me etat matam na anutishtanti sarvajnana vimudhan achetasah tan nashtan vidhi. So those who are, again, abhyasuyantaha is a kind of who are kind of jealous of my teaching, or who are nitpicking, who are find fault with this, who are poking holes in this. This is a result of several generations of collective consciousness. What Krishna is saying, right? Already before Mahabharata, we have thousands of years of intellectual and spiritual development in India. So he, when even if we take the Mahabharata war to be 3000 something BC, we are talking about 2 to 3,000 years of sustained development already by then. So whatever he is saying, it is all crystallized knowledge of many generations. So people who yetu abhyasuyantah me etat matam na anutishtanti, they are not going to be firm in their learning. Sarva jnana vimudhan, they are completely deluded and with regard to all sorts of knowledge. Achetasaha, they are mindless. Tan nashtan viddihi, they'll be doomed if they don't adhere to these principles. Now, this is a sort of warning because these principles are good, right? It's not because of some bloated ego. He's saying if you don't listen to me, that you will be deluded, but it is because these principles are so valuable that you will be, you will be totally lost and deluded and, with no place to stand. Now there are people who accuse Krishna of being egoistic and saying this with a sort of self centeredness, but nothing can be farther from the truth, because when we see the overall text, whenever, like I said, whenever we find something which strikes a somewhat wrong chord, or we are wondering why this shloka is saying in this manner, does it not show a bloated sense of ego and things like that? If you keep it aside for the time being and later look at it in contrast with the larger perspective, we know that this is mostly a sort of guidance which he is saying for the sake of Arjuna. Just like our parents, when they tell the children want to do something which is not good, the parents tell them, see, it's up to you, but if you do this, you're going to destroy your life. Is it from a sense of ego, or is it from a sense of self-aggrandization that the parent will see that? It is mainly because of concern for the child. At the end of the day, the child is free to do what it wants. It will go and do something what it wants. However, it is the responsibility of the parent to give the warning. Well, if you want to go there, you can, but it's very dangerous. Don't do that. So that's the kind of approach which we see here. Okay, Sandeep has raised his hand. If it is a question, can you just type it in the chat? I will take it up if it is something you didn't understand. Seeing ego in someone is a reflection of our character. Okay. To some extent, that's right. But when we are objectively looking at the verses, we can also examine whether the person is coming from a standpoint of ego, or whether the person is coming from a standpoint of wanting to ensure the welfare of the people around him or her. So, although what you say also is correct, because there's a famous story of Duryodhana and Yudhishthira, when Drona goes and asks them, go and find the person who is the most noble person. Duryodhana goes around and he says, I couldn't find anybody who is more nobler than me. I am the most noblest person. And Yudhishthira says, when he find the worst person, he says, I couldn't find anybody worse than me. I am myself full of all sorts of problems. I don't think anybody is worse than me. So that also reflects the mindset of the people who are observing, who have, if they find this to be egoistic, that's also a reflection of their thoughts. However, since we are all honestly examining the text, that problem will not be there, hopefully. And when we see these kind of verses, it is natural for us to be a little surprised. But when we see in the larger context, we will know that it is mostly like a parent telling a child. Ye tvetadabhyasuyanto
ये त्वे तदभ्यसूयन्तो
nanu tishtanti me matam
नानुतिष्ठन्ति मे मतं
sarvajnana vimudham stan
सर्वज्ञानविमूढांस्तान्
Vidhi nashtan achetasaha.
Viddhi nashtan acetasaha.
Then he goes on to say, Sadrisham cheshtate swasyaha prakritir jnanavanapi prakritim yanti bhutani nigraha kim karishyati. People tend to follow their natural instincts, and even the wise ones act within the constraints of their natural instincts. So, what is the use of superficial restraint? So, jnanavan api swasyaha prakritehe sadrisham cheshtate. Jnanavan, one who is knowledgeable, a wise person. Jnanavan api, even a knowledgeable person. Swasyaha prakritehe sadrisham cheshtate. Even a wise person behaves in a manner that is consistent with his or her natural instincts, innate nature. Even a wise person. Okay, so bhutani prakritim yanti. So the all beings tend to follow prakriti, which is nature, which is their natural instinct. So nigraha kim karishyati. So nigraha, restraint. Kim karishyati. What will it do? What is the use of restraint? So here one should understand nigraha not as restraint alone, because then all the time he has been talking about self-restraint and self-control, organizing your mind in such a way that you won't get distracted. All these things we have seen, right? So here one should understand this as superficial restraint, which we have seen earlier. If you remember, a person who uh, you know doesn't do anything with the karmendriyas and sits silently as if he is meditating, and he leaves his sense organs to run wild, such a person is a hypocrite who has fooled himself, and all these things we have seen, right? So therefore this kind of superficial restraint is of no use. The restraint must be a deep seated self control, which must be sustained throughout our life. So therefore, there is no use of superficial, because there is natural impulses for everybody, including the wise people. So one must understand this natural impulse and deeply reflect about this, and not engage in superficial restraint in some sort of token, like, okay, I will sit quietly and do some meditation, where actually the meditation means control of the mind, but you are allowing your mind to run free in all directions. That is not meditation, that is hypocrisy, right? So, it is important to have restraint, but it is important also to realize that superficial restraint is of no use. It does not give any benefits, because it is just tokenism. Sadrisham cheshtate swasyaha
Sadrisham cheshtate swasyaha
prakritir jnanavanapi
prakriter jnanavanapi
prakritim yanti bhutani
prakritim yanti bhutani
nigraha kim karishyati.
nigrahaha kim karishyati.
Then he says, इन्द्रियस्येन्द्रियस्यार्थे रागद्वेषौ व्यवस्थितौ तयोर्न वशमागच्छेत् तौ ह्यस्य परिपन्थिनौ. When senses encounter sensates, when the indriyas encounter the vishaya, naturally likes and dislikes arise. But one should not be swayed by them, because they are obstacles in the path. You have seen earlier also, right? These sensations come and they go. One has to bear them. Tam sthiti kshasva bharata, he says, right, in the second chapter. So here he says, indriyasya indriyasyarthe, indriyasyarthe ragadvesho vyavasthitau. So love and hate, like and dislike, attraction, aversion, these kind of opposites constantly arise when the indriyas encounter the indriyartha, or the senses encounter sensates. Tayoho vasham na agachet. One should not fall into the trap. They should vasha. Vasham is like getting into control. So they will start controlling us. So one should not fall into the trap. One should not be swayed by them. Tauhi asya paripanthau. So they are indeed obstacles in this path. Paripanthinau. So they are paripanthinau. Those two, raga and dvesha, are paripanthinau. They are obstacles in the path. They will stand in the way of us attaining the highest level. Indriyasyendriyasyarthe
इन्द्रियस्येन्द्रियस्यार्थे
ragadveshau vyavasthitau
रागद्वेषौ व्यवस्थितौ
tayorna vashamagachet
तयोर्न वशमागच्छेत्
तौ ह्यस्य परिपन्थिनौ.
तौ ह्यस्य परिपन्थिनौ.
Then he goes on to say, Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha paradharmat swanushtitat swadharme nidhanam shreyaha paradharmo bhayavaha. A very, very popular, very important verse. Excelling in one's own dharma, even if it is less appealing, is better than trying to excel in another's dharma. It is better to die upholding one's dharma. Following the dharma of another is dangerous. It is worse than death, he says. Swanushtitat, su anushtitat, very well, adhering to it very well. Su anushtitat, paradharmat, vigunaha, swadharma shreyan. So, even if you if you excel, if you adhere very well to paradharma, another's dharma, that is worse than following swadharma, even with limitations. Okay, it is better to focus on your dharma than to worry about other dharma. Swadharme nidhanam shreya. You will find a good result by adhering to swadharma. Swadharma nidhanam. So nidhanam shreya. Sorry, swadharme nidhanam shreya. It's better to die. Nidhana is death, right? So it's better to die following one's own dharma. Paradharma bhayavaha. It is very dangerous to follow another's dharma. Now, what basically this verse is talking about is that it is important to recognize and abide by what is right for you. Now, we looked at the different kinds of dharma before we started, I think, the second chapter, or somewhere in the course of the second chapter. We looked at dharma being of multiple kinds, one being the universal dharma or the samanya dharma, dhriti, kshama, asteyam, shaucham, indriya, nigraha, all these things which are universal qualities that are applicable to all people at all times. Then we saw that there is Vishesha Dharma, which applies to specific people at specific times for specific geographies and so forth. Then we saw that there is something called as Apad Dharma, which is what we do in emergencies, and then Naimittika Dharma, and so on. Now, one important addition to that is Swadharma. Swadharma is what is most natural to you, right? What is natural to each individual. Now, we know from our experience that all individuals are not the same. Even twins who are born, a few minutes apart and grow up exactly in the same circumstances, in the same house, same parents, and all parameters alike, they grow up to be very, very different personalities. So there is certain innate trait, innate quality of each individual. And one has to understand what that is and adhere to that. Now, there will always be other things which are other professions which are more glamorous. There are some professions that are very glamorous. They're like a performing artist or an actor or a politician or somebody in the public space. It is always more popular. But unless that is your swadharma, if you start imitating somebody, that is worse than that is as bad as death. He says it is worse than death because when you are imitating somebody, what are you doing? You are killing yourself. You are killing your innate abilities. What is most natural to you? You are not being yourself. You are trying to be somebody. So what has happened to your personality? It is gone. So that's why he says, swadharme nidhanam shreyaha. It's better to die being yourself because until the very end, you will be recognized as you. You have your identity. Paradharmaha bhayavaha. It is very perilous because you can lose your identity. You can lose what you are innately good at. You become try to become somebody else. It won't fit. So it's like trying to wear somebody else's clothing. Yeah. So if you have any question, then please. Uh, yeah. So there is a question. Swadharma for Kumbhakarna Vibhishana is different from that of Ravana. How can you see this Swadharma? Okay. So the thing is, when you say Swadharma, that means here we should understand dharma as nature. Okay. It is something which is there. Swadharma of an individual is what he is. Dharma is something that everybody must adhere to. Violating dharma cannot be your Swadharma, right? Because dharma is something that it is something which is sustainable for oneself, sustainable for the community, for the society, and everything. So, swadharma basically means the natural proclivity, the natural tendency of the person, what kind of work they like to do. Some people are good in math, some people are good in dance, some people are good in, with a very good memory for certain facts. So, like this, each of us have innate ability and innate interest in. Different things. So when we understand that, we pursue that what is most natural to us, that will lead us to. So yeah, if unless you are not able to understand something, yeah, so the Rakshasas dharma, it is against it's adharma. There is no Rakshasas. The whole thing is they are against dharma, so it's unsustainable. That's what the whole idea of Asura Deva. Although they are siblings, Deva and Asuras were brothers. Asuras were the elder brothers of Deva. They did not take a life of yajna. They did not lead a life of dharma. So therefore, they were leading unsustainable lives. We can think of them as like today's materialists, right? Who are only materialists, who are like this crass consumerist culture. It is not sustainable. If you have like you go out and eat a burger once a year or something, no problem. If you eat like some junk food every day, you're obviously going to have a blocked artery in a few months, and that's the end of the story. It's not sustainable for life. So the behavior of the asuras and rakshasas are unsustainable. That's adharma. Adharma is different because here that is a larger framework. What is dharma and adharma is a larger framework. Here, just because the word dharma is common, we should not get confused. Swadharma basically means innate nature, natural tendency. Like the dharma of the fire is to burn, dharma of water is to flow. So it is the most natural thing. Each of us have certain abilities and certain interests, which is an untutored part of our personality. Now, I'm sure many of you have seen with your own children when they are growing up. Some of them would have had a natural tendency for picking up, math or picking up scientific things, or some of them natural tendency for music. When they just listen a couple of times, they'll be able to identify a raga or the melody. So, like this, children have certain natural tendencies. If that is encouraged and channelized, it leads to a more fulfilling life. That's what it says, and it is noteworthy that perhaps this is the only concept which is so clearly defined and repeated in the Gita. This verse comes twice, with a small variation. In the 18th chapter, he says, it is very important to align to Swadharma and very important to be wary of paradharma. If I try to go and copy somebody else because that is more glamorous, because that there is more money there is more fame, more name, etc., etc., I will be destroying myself. My own identity will go away. So it is when it comes to our interest and what we want to take up, it is just like buying underclothes, right? We want to buy underclothes that fit us. There is no point. I may be a big fan of Tendulkar, but if I buy the same underwear that he wears, it will not fit me. Simple logic. Like we go to a clothing store, we go earlier days, it was even more customized. We will take a piece of cloth, go to a tailor, measure, and get something stitched for our size, right? So exactly same thing. We want a tailor-made, customized thing for each person. That is the a good life where it is suited to us, where we are keeping in mind our nature, our tendencies, and then picking what we want to do. Okay, so this is I mean, it's a very long drawn discussion. But anyway, you understand the meaning of this verse, so we will move on to the next. Shreyan Swadharmo Vigunaha
श्रेयान् स्वधर्मो विगुणः
Paradharmat Swanushtitat
परधर्मात् स्वनुष्ठितात्
Swadharme Nidhanam Shreyaha
स्वधर्मे निधनं श्रेयः
Paradharmo Bhayavahaha.
परधर्मो भयावहः.
Yeah, so if any questions are there, please send me a mail and we can bring it up for a little longer discussion tomorrow in the morning. So this after this, Arjuna then asks a very pertinent question. Arjuna Uvacha, Atha kena prayuktoyam papam jarati purushaha anichannapi varshneya baladiva niyojitaha. A very, very pertinent question. He says, what is that powerful force that compels a person to commit papa, although he doesn't want to be sinful? He doesn't want to do a mistake. What compels him to do this mistake? Now, one should not think that this question is only related to the previous verse, but he is asking in general. There are so many ways of goofing up, right? Now, if you look at the previous few verses, what Krishna has spoken in the third chapter, there are many ways of goofing up. One is to go to Paradharma instead of keeping to Swadharma. The other is to let go of the teachings of what Krishna has taught and do something totally opposite. Then other one is to think that I am the one doing and forget the fact that the gunas are at play. And then being lazy without bothering about the consequences, working for selfish reasons and not for the benefits of the world. So like this, there are many ways to goof up just based on what Krishna has said in the previous 5 or 10 verses. So therefore Arjuna is asking, Arjuna Uvacha Varshneya, son of the scion of the Vrishnivamsha, Atha kena prayuktaha anichannapi. What is the reason? What is that powerful force? Anichannapi, even though one is not really interested, one does not want to commit mistake. Balat niyojitaha, that forcibly makes a person do something against his wish. Iva ayam purushaha papam charati. What forces a person to tread the path of papa, even though that person is not interested? See, nobody wants to be a bad person, including the villains of our epics, whether it's Duryodhana or Ravana or Karna or Dushasana, all the Shakuni, whatever villains in our epics, none of them are, if you ask them, they will not say that, oh, I am a bad guy. They think that they are right. Whatever that they do, they think that they are doing something which is most suited for them, which is the noblest thing that is possible. Nobody wants to be a villain in their own life story. Correct? Everybody thinks they are right. It is only when we zoom out and see from the larger framework of dharma, we realize that these people are adharmic, and here we have the dharmic people. So the Kauravas are not following dharma. Pandavas are following dharma to greater extent than Kauravas. Like this, we see when we take a larger picture. But at the individual level, everybody think that they are right. Like I said earlier, no, the Duryodhana, when asked, he says, "I am the noblest person." He's not lying. He honestly thinks he's the noblest person. So therefore, people don't want to do papa. They don't want to commit sin. They don't want to tread the wrong path. But what is that force that compels them to do it? It almost seems like they are not intending to do something wrong, but some other force is dragging them. What is that force? So Arjuna Uvacha,
अर्जुन उवाच
अथ केन प्रयुक्तोऽयं
अथ केन प्रयुक्तोऽयं
पापं चरति पूरुषः
पापं चरति पूरुषः
अनिच्छन्नपि वार्ष्णेय
अनिच्छन्नपि वार्ष्णेय
बलादिव नियोजितः.
बलादिव नियोजितः.
Then he goes on to answer the question beautifully. Another very, very famous shloka. Sri Bhagavan Vacha Kama Esha Krodha Esha Rajoguna Samudbhavaha Mahashano Mahapapma Vidhyenamiha Vairinam. It is desire leading to anger. It arises from the guna of rajas, unquenchable and corrupting. It is an evil enemy indeed. Eshah kama, eshah krodha, rajoguna samudbhava. It is kama, it is krodha. It comes, it is born from the guna of rajas, relentless activity. It is born from rajas, maha shanaha, maha ashanaha. So it is like a ever hungry, mahashanaha, unquenchable, mahapapma, it is corrupting, it is hugely evil. Cha asti, mahashanaha, mahapapma cha asti. Ataha, therefore, we have to assume that iha enam vairinam vidhi. Therefore, this is a, you know, very, very wild enemy here in this world, and vidhi. Know that it is a very, very dangerous enemy. So, kama esha, krodha esha. So, the main enemy here is kama. Kama as in the so here it's a good place to talk about what is the Indian Hindu conception of Arishad Varga. Probably many of you have already heard this. Arishad Varga refers to the class of six most dangerous enemies of human beings. So the most dangerous enemies of human, like we have, the most dangerous enemies. Every country will have their list of enemies. Many of them will be neighbors also. So these are the enemy countries. They are always spying on us, and we are spying on them, and so on. So the enemy countries are there. Here we have the conception of enemies of human beings. So who are the six biggest enemies of yours? It's not your some mother-in-law. It is not your neighbor. It is not your colleague. They are not your real enemies. Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Mada, Moha, Matsarya, or whatever, the order is immaterial. So, Kama, which is lust, blind craving, Krodha, which is anger, Lobha, greed, Moha, which is infatuation, Mada, intoxication, and Matsarya, jealousy, envy. So, these are the real enemies of human beings. It is not some persons. Persons are maybe our enemies, that's a different thing. But real enemies are these Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, and Matsarya. Now, I don't know whether I discussed this earlier, but there is a question of how come the Purusharthas have Kama, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. And Arishad Varga also have Kama, Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. How come Kama is both one of the four cardinal values and one of the six fundamental enemies of humans? So here, it obviously, like I said, we should not doubt the intelligence of our ancestors without solid proof. So therefore, the kama which comes in these two places are two different things. They have different flavors. In the case of the Purushartha, kama is enjoyment, desire, yearning, craving, wanting to something, which is the fundamental driver for all our actions in our day to day life. Because we have certain desire, we do action. If we don't have any desire, then there is no need to do any action. We will just be sitting silently doing nothing because we have a desire to live, therefore we go and get some food to eat. We have desire to be peaceful, so we get sleep. We have desire to increase our numbers, we procreate. We have a desire to attain some name and fame, so therefore we lead a certain quality, certain type of life. So the desire is driving us, and it is very essential. Without desire, even the creation of the universe may not have been possible. Whereas in the case of the Arishad Varga, the kama refers to lust, refers to a sort of very crass craving, almost an obsessive addiction, right? That's the kind of flavor of meaning we get in kama, krodha, lobha, moha, right? So that kama, that desire, that unbridled hunger for things, that is what he's referring to as kama. And like we discussed earlier, kama can never be fully satisfied, it can never be fully quenched. So it naturally leads to uh, anger when the desires are unfulfilled. So kama leads to krodha. We saw it in the second chapter, right? In the 62nd, 63rd verse. Similarly, here we see that it's kama, and as a result of kama, krodha. And it comes from the quality of rajas, because rajas is the one always relentlessly working and relentless activity, and that is kind of fueling the desire, and desires are not getting fulfilled. Unfulfilled desires lead to anger. And what sort of desire is this? It is mahashanaha and mahapapma. It is unquenchable. It is ever hungry. It has this desire, this kama has a ravenous appetite. And mahapapma, it is very corrupting and evil, because it is in this mad quest to fulfill our desires. If we are willing to sacrifice everything, then that's when the ecological imbalance happens. That's when families are broken, relationship becomes sour, when this obsession to accomplish, fulfill our desire is there. So it must be having, our desires are not wrong, it must have a certain framework, it must be regulated. This is what he says later on in the 7th chapter also, that the kama must be regulated by dharma. So similarly, rajas and tamas must be regulated by sattva, otherwise it is problematic. Okay. Shri Bhagavan Vacha,
श्रीभगवानुवाच
kama esha krodha esha
काम एष क्रोध एष
rajo guna samudbhavah
रजोगुणसमुद्भवः
mahashano mahapapma
महाशनो महापाप्मा
vidyenamiha vairinam.
विद्येनमिह वैरिणम्.
Then Krishna goes on to give a beautiful imagery. Dhumen avriyate vanhihi yatha darsho malena cha yathol ben avruto garbha tatha tenedam avrutam. So here again, vanhihi becomes vanhir yatha darsho malena cha yathol ben avruto garbhas tatha tenedam avrutam. Just as fire is enveloped by smoke, a mirror is covered by dust, and embryo is enclosed in the womb, wisdom is veiled by desire. So desire veils wisdom. So yatha dhumena vanhihi. So in dhuma, in smoke, vanhihi, avriyate. So vanhi, fire, is engulfed or encased or enveloped by smoke. Because of the smoke, we don't see the fire. So yatha dhumena vanhi avriyate, tatha, similarly, tatha, we have to add this, tatha malena adarshaha avriyate, again we have to add that, understand from the context. So by dust, the adarsha, that is the mirror, is covered, right? Yatha ulbena cha garbaha. So the embryo is enclosed in the womb. Avritah. Yatha ulbena cha garbaha avritah. Tatha idam. That is, similarly, this. What is this? Jnanam. So the original verse does not say wisdom is veiled by, so it says tatha idam tena avritam. Similarly, this is enclosed by that. So this and that we have to understand by context, right? So the tena, by that, is quite straightforward, because we have seen earlier kama esha, krodha esha. So kama is the main focal point of the discussion. So we know what is the tena here. That is, what is the thing which is enclosing. So desire is enclosing. So just as fire encloses, envelops, is enveloped by smoke, just as the mirror is covered by dust, the embryo is covered in the womb. This is in and is enclosed by desire. So what is this idam? We have to understand that as jnana. What is the one which desire, covers? It is the understanding, it is the right way of living. So we can understand it as dharma, other thing, but here it is, it is easier, it makes more sense to understand it as jnana, which is all encompassing in this sense. So our wisdom is veiled by desire. So there's very nice imagery that he has given, that we have experienced this mirror is covered by dust, so therefore we are not able to see the complete exact picture. Otherwise, it gives a right picture. Also, the mirror is called Adarsha because it reflects the best version of us. That's the notion, right? In a mirror, always what we see in the mirror appears very beautiful to us because we all love ourselves. So if the mirror is covered by dust, then we can't see anything. We are not able to see the reality. We don't know that behind that dust there lies this very nice image of us, right? Similarly, if the fire is covered by smoke, and the embryo is wrapped in the womb, it's wrapped in that embryonic fluid and so on. Similarly, wisdom is covered by desire. Now, what is interesting here in all these examples is the one that is being covered is very great. The one that is doing the work of covering is something very, very ordinary. Some chotta stuff is covering. Smoke is very, very, compared to fire, which is so powerful and radiant. What is covering it? It is some smoke, which is having not even anything in it. It has no sattva, nothing. Similarly, the mirror, a very beautiful mirror, but it is being covered by dust. Dust is something so insignificant, but it is capable of covering this. Similarly, the embryonic fluid and this covers the embryo, covers the unborn child. The unborn child is so important, but is being covered by something which is not so important. So, of course, you should not read too much into this metaphor and say that, oh, actually, that is protecting the child and so on. The notion here is basically something which is being covered and engulfed so that it is not known to the eye. And what is doing the covering is something which is less significant as compared to what is being covered. So, therefore, by using this example, he shows how desire is actually not very important. It is jnana, or it is, even if somebody does not accept the interpretation of that idam means jnanam, if you want to take it as dharma, if you want to take it as bhakti, you want to take it as sat karma, whatever, you fill it up with whatever you want, but it is more important than this desire. So therefore, it is, even the mighty sun can get eclipsed by a moon, which is relying on it for the light. It does not have a light of its own. It is only reflecting the light of the sun. But that can easily it eclipse the great sun itself. So one need not to cause damage. One need not be a great person. If you want to build something new, build a empire, something, then you have to be very powerful and sensible and honest and all that. To cause destruction, to cause damage, it can be done by anything. So it is very important to realize the danger of the insignificant and the nuisance value that the insignificant ones can create, right? Even in our life, there will be people who are trying to cause irritation and damage. They will not have anything to contribute, but they will be ready to find fault with whatever you are doing and whatever good work that you are undertaking. So it is important to know that this is secondary and move ahead. Okay, so let's finish with this verse. We have just another 4 or 5 which we'll do tomorrow, and then we'll do a recap of the 3rd chapter. Dhume navriyate vanhihi
धूमेन व्रियते वह्निः
yatha darsho malena cha
यथा दर्शो मलेन च
yathol benavrato garbha
यथोल्भेनावृतो
no
गर्भः
yatha ulbena the yathol benavrato garbha
यथोल्भेनावृतो गर्भः
tatha tenedam avratam.
तथा तेनेदमावृतम्.
So with this, we come to the end of the verses we want to discuss today. Let me see if there are any. Okay, could you restate the Arishad Varga and the meanings? Okay, so Arishad Varga, Ari is enemy, Shad is 6, Varga is class. Arishad Varga is a class of 6 enemies, and there are usually this is a traditional order: Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, and Matsarya. This is the traditional order, but they not be in any order. So Kama, lust, craving, desire. Krodha, anger, irritation, frustration, all this. Krodha. Lobha, greed, avarice. Moha, infatuation, obsession, kind of blind love. Mada, intoxication, arrogance, bloated sense of ego, all this kind of thing. And Matsarya, jealousy, petty envy, feeling, kind of frustrated seeing the rise of another person. So these are the 6. What is this? Does it mean not to get inspired? So Prasadji has a question. I'm not very clear about the question, Prasadji. If you can send it to me in a message, like an email or a WhatsApp message, then I will bring it up in a discussion tomorrow. Okay, so I think I've kind of covered what's there in the chat. Always, if there is anything which is pending, please send me a message and I'll bring it up in the session. So like I said, we have a few more verses which we'll cover tomorrow, and we'll spend the rest of tomorrow's session reviewing chapter 3, and then we can start chapter 4 from after the weekend. So good. Thank you so much. Om Tat Sat. Have a nice evening. Have a nice day wherever you are. And thank you, Suresh ji, for reciting today.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Om Tat Sat. Namaste.